It's time for final practice for the Carfax 400, the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. We'll all climb in with Kevin Harvick. The intensity, we saw it in the first practice. It's hot here in Michigan, 84 degrees. The good news is 0 chance of rain, so says the weatherman. And hi everybody, Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, and Jeff Hammond. Glad to be back with you. We're all off to a running start here. And Jeff, I talked about it a second ago. We really saw the intensity in Jimmie Johnson's camp, Juan Pablo Montoya's camp. They had that final session to debrief. Now they put into practice what they've changed in that race car.
Yeah, it's time now to practice what you're preaching, because now you put that setup that you think is going to work and you fine tune around it. A lot of these guys were trying a lot of different packages during that first practice. You saw guys come here changing shocks, throwing springs around, messing around with track bars and trailing arms. They were doing everything in that first practice to see exactly what the cars were going to like. Now let's try to figure out what you can make the driver happy and get everything fine-tuned down, because, Larry, as we know about this racetrack, there's not a lot of cautions. You don't have a lot of opportunity to work on it.
Yeah, Jeff, and with the hot and as slick as this racetrack is, these guys were like on a teeter-totter. You'd get the car nice and secure getting in the corner. Oh, it's too tight. It won't turn off the corner. Okay, now we got it turning good off the corner. Oh, no, I'm way too loose getting in the corner. You're trying to zero in on the balance of this car because, like you said, Jeff, you may not get a lot of opportunities to adjust on your car. You go back to the June race, we only had 3 cautions in that race. You could be well into this 200-lap race before you get an opportunity to make that first adjustment.
Mark Martin's going to start on the outside of row 1. Brian Vickers is the pole sitter. Mark right alongside. Of course, he won the race here 8 weeks ago. You know, Jeff, Larry, we've talked about it all weekend, but it is, to me, amazing. We were here just 7 or 8 weeks ago, but this track has changed dramatically. We looked at that, the 48 team, and Larry, as you said, a car that led nearly 3/4 of the laps, nearly won the race, but they're going through wholesale changes.
Well, even if we were just here a week ago, and the weather a week ago was like it was in June, Steve, it's much hotter this weekend. I can remember being here in June and in the mornings needing to put a little bit of a jacket on because it was fairly cool. But yeah, it's been sitting for 2 months in the hot summer sun, and all that does is just take grip away from the racetrack, because a lot of these teams brought the same car back. We have the same tire combination, but the racetrack has lost grip, and that's the reason we saw so much scrambling, even by the 48 team that brought the same car they were so dominant with in the June race.
42 car right there of Juan Pablo Montoya running around the top of the racetrack. And no, that's not a strange place to see him, especially here at Michigan. He'll be one of the cars that we will bet on will be riding around the top of this racetrack pretty much all day long.
Well, and I think just listening to the garage area after that first practice, that's one of the cars you can bet on. I think being at the front of the pack tomorrow, seemed fairly happy with his car. I'm not sure anybody was totally happy with their car, but he ran several laps. He was 3rd quickest overall, so it looks like the momentum of this 42 team with 4 races to go before the chase is looking pretty good.
Well, now here's something that's really unique about this track. We talk about it. It's really wide. You'll see guys run at the bottom. You'll see them run in the middle of the racetrack. You'll see them run at the top. Right now, the 07 of Casey Mears took that top line away from Juan Pablo Montoya, and he's showing me right now that he can go to the bottom of the racetrack and make a pass. So I think he's pretty happy with that race car, at least early on in his final practice. Let's see if he decides to stay down there. No, he's working his way back up toward the top of the racetrack, Steve.
Jeff, Juan Pablo Montoya has finished 15th or better in their last 9 races. He's talked to us on trackside about keeping their eye on the prize, getting in the chase. I will say, however, this has not been a great track for Juan Pablo Montoya. 5 starts here. He's never finished in the top 10.
I would say he'll be working on changing that tomorrow. We see Jeff Gordon, a man that comes in here 3rd in the points. Jeff's going to start 21st in this race tomorrow. And just looking at our practice sheet from earlier, where we had roughly that hour practice, Jeff Gordon ran a total of 28 laps. He was 18th quickest. A couple of Michigan wins to his credit.
Mark Martin, the quickest early in this practice. Stay with us here on Speed. There's your pole sitter, Brian Vickers. In fact, he took the pole position for both races here this weekend. He starts on P1 in the Carfax 250 later today.
And of our guys that we feel like that's outside the top 12, he by far had the best qualifying effort. When you look at Clint Bowyer, Kyle Busch, David Rudiman, guys that still potentially have a shot at this chase, those guys did not get a good qualifying effort. Brian Vickers was fastest in the first practice earlier, and right now he's second quickest behind Mark Martin.
And let me correct myself. Juan Pablo Montoya has, in fact, one top 10 finish that came here 2 months ago when he started 7th and finished 6th.
The key thing right now, I think, about Brian Vickers, as we watch Ryan Newman go past him, is we know this 83 car is fast. We know the Red Bull cars can be fast because even his teammates got speed, has had good qualifying efforts. But what they need to focus on, a lot like everybody else here, is closing the deal. Yes, he wants to go to victory lane, will also be a big shot in the arm for this entire organization if that can happen anytime in the remaining part of the season.
Jimmie Johnson, 5th overall, working his 3rd lap of this final practice. It's scheduled for 1 hour. Right behind Ryan Newman.
Ryan Newman comes in here 9th in the points, only 100 points to the good. You know, they had such great runs late May, June, and they have really struggled here of late. He's just hanging inside that top 12 right now.
Yeah, just one top 10 in his last 8 races for Ryan Newman.
We've documented it several times this weekend that this is one of the racetracks that Jimmie Johnson has not gone to victory lane at. His best finish being 3rd. Looked like he was on his way there earlier this year in June after leading a ton of laps, over 140 laps here. Ran out of fuel with 1 lap to go. Didn't get a chance to get to victory lane. And again, same car, hopefully better results this time. But they had a lot of work to do during this in-between practices. They weren't 100% happy with this 48 car. I think Mark Martin was about the only one I can remember. And here's the winless tracks we're talking about when it comes to Jimmie Johnson. You see Michigan on there along with Bristol, Chicago, Homestead, Infineon, and Watkins Glen. And he's going to have an opportunity to change that, at least here this weekend, as well as Chicago and Bristol later on this year, along with the final finale in Homestead. He can break through that winless barrier, Bob.
Well, Jeff, he does want to win here at Michigan, but he needs to get a lot better on the racetrack. Now, he did make that significant change that we documented during the last part of that last session, and that made the car a little bit better. But Jimmie still felt that the front needed to be balanced with the rear just a little bit more. Still kind of twitching in the middle of the corner. So they changed shocks and springs on the front end of this number 48 in hopes that it gets better. But right now, Jimmie all quiet and concentrating inside the cockpit of that race car.
Bob, just behind him again, Ryan Newman. Now, guys, this interests me. Ryan Newman won 2 consecutive races here. August of 2003, then June of 2004. And you know what? He has not finished in the top 10 since.
And I tell you, their race here in June was almost a complete disaster. They finished 23rd. They were 1 lap down. They were so loose. At one point on a pit stop, they caught a caution. Remember, only had 3. Tony Gibson brought that car to pit road, and they actually changed the right rear spring because nothing they were doing to it, Jeff, was making a difference.
Well, I know that Ryan Newman can drive a loose race car, but he couldn't drive that car in June. It was just totally out of control, and I think it was kind of out of character for not only the Stewart-Haas team, but for Tony Gibson and Ryan to miss it that bad. They had to come to pit road and do that. But they, as you said, they made a good recovery to salvage at least a 23rd out of that event.
Carl Edwards in the 99, 2-time winner here. He's got a lot of work to do tomorrow. He's going to start 32nd.
The winner here 1 year ago. And you know, you look at Carl Edwards and you feel like, okay, he's looking pretty good before races to go. He's 6th in the points, 203 points in front of Kyle Busch. But right now, he wouldn't have any bonus points in that chase if he indeed makes it. You get 10 bonus points for each win in the first 26. He's been winless since Homestead Miami Speedway last November.
Carl's average finish here is 6.3, the best of any active driver. But again, he's got his work cut out for him. Mark Martin is the fastest here. Brian Vickers is 2nd. David Reagan 3rd. Stay with us here on Speed. A lot of work to do. Tonight, history will be made and the dirt's gonna fly when the best of the best go head-to-head in the granddaddy of all sprint car races, the 49th annual Knoxville Nationals. Live coverage begins tonight at 10 Eastern only on Speed. See Casey Kane there in the garage area. His driver, Joey Saldana, will be competing there. And again, the coverage tonight live at 10 Eastern.
It's Kurt Busch in the 2 car. He's 11th right now. He's run a total of 17 laps. Let's take a look at Kurt Busch. Has that kind of a clear amber type looking shield. We'll be able to look in the eyes of Kurt Busch, especially when he turns the car down in the corner to the left. See the entrance speed there, off the gas. Slowest about 148 miles per hour. Picks the throttle back up coming off turn 4 down this long front straightaway that's banked roughly about 12 degrees.
18 laps there, 18.
Pretty impressive right there. 18-lap run there on the 2 car.
He's 11th overall, Bob Dillner.
Well, Kurt Busch has run the gamut of conditions with this Blue Deuce during the 2 practice sessions. He started out really loose in the first session, and then the car got kind of numb. It really didn't react to anything. First run out here during this practice, it was a little bit tight center off. So they changed tires, went to stickers, and this is a long run for Kurt Busch here to try to find out how this car will interact with the track in these type conditions at this time of day, which will be race time tomorrow.
That's pretty good strategy. You know, they probably worked through a lot of things yesterday and in the first practice. And there you can see just kind of cleaning his shield off a little bit. But a fuel run here is about 42 to 46 laps. So if they put stickers on him, filled it up with fuel, if you could run about 20 to 25 laps, that at least burns that fuel load half down. And Jeff, he's definitely looking about the best as far as our 5, 10, 15 lap average chart.
And this is what I think Pat Trice is looking for. When he started out his 5-lap average, he was 7th quick. By the time he got through a 10-lap run, he moved up to 6th quick. But now as he moves into a 15-lap run, he's 2nd, right in behind Juan Pablo Montoya, and his speed is very compatible to the 42 car. Again, you're listening, you're hearing Pat Trice and let him know a 20-lap run has been completed.
245, 12.8 on the voltmeter, 65 oil, 8 fuel.
He's giving him a reading off every gauge on his dash, volts in the alternator, oil pressure, fuel pressure, water temp. We watch our points leader. I'm not sure he's got very good rear grip right now.
The car looked like it was kind of free, a little bit dicey, a little bit dancy, if you want to call it that. 14 car. Now he just came out. He's not been out on the racetrack. There's just a few laps here for Tony Stewart. As a matter of fact, he's just completing his 4th lap.
Tony finished 7th here in June. 14 top 10 finishes for Stewart on this 2-mile super speedway.
And Steve, a lot of times when you see guys out on the racetrack, 4 or 5 laps in their tires, you've got to take in consideration if the car didn't look really good, it may be the tire pressure still hasn't built up too. The car's kind of wiggling around a little bit. Now, the car looks a lot more stable through that corner that time.
Yes, Steve, in his last 10 Michigan races, 8 top 10 finishes. So pretty solid here of late here in the Irish Hills.
Martin Truex Jr., that #1 car. He's going to start 5th tomorrow right now, 19th overall. He's run 8 laps working on #9.
You know, honestly, for almost the full 2 days we've been here, the Earnhardt Ganassi cars, Montoya, the 42 car, Truex, the 1 car, both cars were pretty good throughout all the practices and obviously qualifying.
You know, the big plus about that, Larry, if you've got both your cars running well, you've got great notes to compare. You know, your setups may vary a little bit, but you may look at Martin's, say, for example, Juan Pablo may look at Martin and say, hey, you know, I like that shot combination I think he's got on the right side of the car. Can we try it? Or vice versa. Martin Truex could look at Juan Pablo's car and say, I like the way you guys have got the front end set. I think I want to try that.
And you know, for Richard Childress Racing, we got into a discussion about them in that first practice. The good news is the Earnhardt Childress engines are running good in the Earnhardt Ganassi cars. The bad news is the Earnhardt Ganassi cars are running good with the Earnhardt Childress engines. At least Richard Childress Racing can take the variable of the engines out of the things they're fighting this year.
18 minutes into this 1-hour practice. Stay with us here on Speed. We'll be back to the Michigan International Speedway.
Welcome back to final practice here at Michigan International Speedway for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. And in the garage area, we find Clint Bowyer and his team continuing to make adjustments to his race car. You know, I almost want to reach out to these guys. You got to feel for some of them when they try to give feedback during these practice sessions. The pressure and the time constraints that we have in these final practices are always high for these guys. You heard Clint Bowyer on the radio this last run out there telling his crew chief, Shane Wilson, it's a little too tight, and then it got loose. I don't know. Try to free it up, I guess. That's got to be frustrating for crew chiefs. It's got to be frustrating for drivers in the very, very small changes that they feel in these new race cars. Now, Richard Childress has came down off the hauler to talk to crew chief Shane Wilson on some of these adjustments. Shane right now is making a left rear spring change. They just took it off the scales. The hood's down, Clint's in. It looks like they are going out for another run right now. Steve?
And you know, guys, I worked for Richard Childress for 4 years, and Richard would get up on top of that hauler during practice. And you know what? He may not even have a stopwatch in his hand, but with his experience as a driver for many years as an owner, what he would do is come down to me, and maybe if we thought we were really good, he would come down there and say, Larry, what you might think about, here's what I'm seeing. He may convince me we're not quite as good as we think, or vice versa. If I was panicking because it seemed like we were way off, he'd come down there and say, Larry, just remember, you're on the same tires that you've been on all practice, and guys are throwing new tires. He had a good way of becoming a common effect for a race team.
Bob Dillner, we see a little scrapage along the side of that number 2 car for Kurt Busch. Thought he was getting awfully close to that wall. Bob?
No big deal. He's fast, and that's how he likes his race car. A little on the edge for Kurt Busch, and he just hit the wall. You can see it right here. He just gets a little too high. You see that back end just kind of come out just a touch, and he scrapes the wall coming off of turn number 2. But you know what? Kurt really didn't even feel it. The guys were looking at the right rear quarter panel when they came in, and they said, that's all right. As long as we're quick, we're good to go. He can do that all day.
Well, he just made that 20-lap run, and I think Kurt Busch and Pat Tryson, they know now enough about this car. They know about this racetrack. Full load of fuel, new tires. You're probably going to have to be a little free at the beginning of the run. As it burns that fuel off, they know the car is going to start tightening up.
Hey, just a few seconds ago, Dale Earnhardt Jr. got extremely loose in turn 4. We've heard that a lot. We watch a replay.
He's run a total of 11 laps. He's 8th quickest. Now, that's a little more than just free.
Wow.
That's pretty loose.
And that may not look big on television, but you're going, and we've talked about it for 2 days. Now, into the corners, that was big.
It was
I
huge.
think we do a lot of things justice with pictures, but I think when you're that loose or hitting the fence with the front end because it's not turning, we can't do justice with the speeds these cars are going when that happens.
That was quite a save. Dale Earnhardt Jr., good news for him. He's top 10 right now, 8th overall in his Chevrolet.
We've been watching him over the previous practice and start of this second one here and the final one. And it looks to me like they've got a pretty good hot rod right now. He's able to go out there. I've had seen some guys try to get in behind him to try to run with him. They can't keep up. Mark Martin for enough laps down here today. I think he's got a pretty good ride for tomorrow. And we know he can win here at this racetrack if he's got a competitive race car.
And he's running that high line, which we totally expected. Here's Casey Kane, the 9 car. Now, we know he had a great qualifying run yesterday. He qualified 10th, but he'll have to go to the rear of the field because of having engine problems. This was in his last run. He's 22nd quickest. This is over in turn 2.
Well, this is not Knoxville. This is not Knoxville, Casey. Ooh, he had his hands full, Larry.
And this is what can get you in big trouble tomorrow. It can get you in trouble today, but if you look there, you're totally by yourself. Remember, there'll be 42 cars, especially right after a double file restart. If that happens, that kid ended up getting a lot of other cars in trouble with you.
Yeah, we thought the one that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was big. That was really big. That happened twice. It got sideways on him twice.
Yeah, he gathered it up 2 or 3 times.
Yes, he did.
Joey Logano had a great qualifying effort. He starts 8th, and right now he is 17th on the speed chart, Wendy.
Joey Logano started this practice session off a little bit tight, and as he continued to burn off fuel, he said it made it a little bit looser. Tight in the center, loose off. He was freer into 3. He said the steering felt a little bit better this practice session. In between, they worked on that from practice session earlier today, and Zipadelli has made a front shock change, which looks like it has helped Joey Logano so far this practice.
You know, we had him on our trackside show last night, and, you know, he was very confident in saying, I go to these racetracks for the second time with Greg Zipadelli and the 20 team. We know he's been to a lot of them more than once, including the Nationwide Series, but I'm going back with my race team in Cup, and I think we're seeing it in qualifying, we're seeing it in race performance, and we're seeing it in practice.
Hey, a year ago, start of this year, they're using Tony Stewart's notes. Now they're using Joey Logano notes. That's what I think is helping this organization. This particular car, more than anything else, he knows what he's going back with.
Ryan Newman, the two-time winner here, waits for his team to make changes to his car. You saw Mark Martin in the garage. He's quickest. Four races from now, just 12 drivers will have an opportunity to race for the championship. Tony Stewart is your points leader, followed by Jimmy Johnson. But boys, that's where things get interesting. Matt Kenseth, for now, has that 12th and final spot. Kyle Busch, Brian Vickers, Clint Bowyer, they want it.
And I'm sure when we go off into turn 1 tomorrow, we get the green flag. Brian Vickers would love to lead that first lap. That would take 5 points off that deficit. Kyle Busch, we're seeing more and more cars as they go through the middle of the corner on the exit, just the cars stepping out. It's just like, sometimes we call it the Adidas, sometimes we call it the hospital hop. We call it a lot of different things depending on the intensity of it.
I call it loose.
Kyle Busch, 12th quickest right now, just a tick slower than his brother Kurt. And a tick faster than Brad Keselowski. 13th in points, Kyle Busch is.
And this time, a year ago, there was no question who was going to be the points leader when the chase started. I mean, he pretty much had yarded everybody. He was sitting there with about 7 or 8 wins. And here he got those 3 wins earlier in the season. But when he finished 4th at Watkins Glen, that was his first top 5 finish in roughly almost 3 months.
And Larry, just 2 top 10 finishes in his last 10 races. David Reagan has had a disappointing season, but is doing some very positive things in this practice. 3rd overall in his Roush Fenway Ford.
Well, in the Roush Fenway group, they're looking pretty good here, which we always know when you come to Michigan. We've been talking about it all weekend, how strong the Roush Fenway group happens to be. And when you look right now, you got David Reagan 3rd. You've got Jamie McMurray up there in 9th. You got Carl Edwards, he's 14th quickest. So the Roush Fenway group, they're making a little noise here. Practice, they just got to close the deal tomorrow on this 400-mile race.
We are at the point of the year, point of the season where there's a lot of intrigue. As you said, Larry, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about 2009. We have that coupled with the 12 drivers who will make up the chase. There's a lot going on.
Well, you've got the fight to stay in the top 35, and we know that Scott Speed back there in 36, he'd love to get in the top 35 before the season ends. We've got teams that's not been to victory lane this year. Dale Earnhardt Jr., #1 example, or the Richard Childress cars, and then a lot of unknowns about a lot of drivers in their status for 2010.
One of the Roush Fenway cars in the garage, Greg Biffle, and we go to Bob Dillner.
Well, the Roush Fenway car is pretty good, except for the 16 of Greg Biffle. He continues to struggle. I talked to Greg Irwin, the crew chief, during the break, and he said, you know what was really weird is that the setup we had in the car for that first practice was the same setup we had yesterday. Greg liked it then. He doesn't like it today. They have tried everything with this race car, but nothing to Greg's liking. So they are still struggling with this 16. Now, I got a chance to spend some time with Greg on Monday night, back when we flew back to Charlotte, North Carolina. And he said, you know what, Bob, I'm really concentrating on these next 3 races, because between Michigan, Bristol, and Atlanta, I know I run really well there. If I'm battling for a spot in the chase when I get to Richmond, I could be in trouble because it's not one of my favorite racetracks. So the pressure is on for Greg Biffle, 10th at points.
And all I can say, Bob, we've been talking about it since we came on the air here yesterday. This is a difficult racetrack, and welcome to Michigan, because from one day to the next, it can change. It can give you a totally different feel, and what was working on Friday doesn't work on Saturday. The same reason why some of these guys that will start off today feel pretty good about everything when they go to the motor coaches or the hotels, drop the green flag tomorrow,
66.
whole different ball game.
Kevin Harvick, the 29 car. He's going to start 22nd tomorrow.
He's on the wrong side of the speed charts right now, 33rd overall in his Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet. By the way, Larry, you talked about Richard Childress's experience as an owner and as a driver. 285 starts for RC as a driver between 1969 and 1981.
And I think so many of our newer fans, they have no idea the whole history there. That yeah, Richard Childress was a very competitive race car driver, did it with a very small budget. And pretty much in 1981, he had an opportunity to put a young driver in his race car that had a sponsor. And Jeff Hammond's boss, Junior Johnson, went to Richard Childress and said, you need to put that boy Earnhardt in that 3 car. He's bringing a sponsor, and you can be the owner, and you'll do a better job, especially with the money you're going to have as far as your sponsorship.
That was the beginning, and the rest is history.
Up off the corner and held the entry just a touch, but not really a big
We'll be
improvement.
back to the Michigan International here on Speed right after this.
Kyle Busch in the garage area this final practice session where he has spent most of his time today. He made a quick 3-lap run, came in, they worked on it for about 20 minutes. The car originally in the first practice session, way too tight. They finally loosened it up, and now it's way too loose for Kyle Busch. And his language on the radio, just about as colorful as that Interstate paint scheme. They are making changes once again. Steve?
Well, Wendy, I think it's that teeter-totter that Larry talked about in first practice.
Told you, pressure in that garage area is going to get to the max. Not only here this weekend, wait till you get to Bristol, roll right on into Atlanta, and by the time we roll into Richmond, when these guys are really knowing that it's the last race to get in the chase, it won't be anything but ugly.
Won't be pretty.
You know, a car that had a problem in that first practice, A.J. Allmendinger in the 44 car had a great qualifying run yesterday, qualified 13th. He was running a high groove through 1 and 2 and got up into the wall, but looks like they've got that 44 car back out there. He's run a total of 14 laps. We talked to Dale Inman between those 2 practices, and he felt that they were going to evaluate the car and more than likely try to fix it and not go to back up and give up that starting position.
You notice anything, Larry?
They didn't work on the color.
No. Did you notice anything? All of a sudden, he's running around the bottom of the racetrack instead of the top.
That's it. Yep. He said he just had to start experimenting with the top groove when he hit the wall earlier.
A.J. Allmendinger 24th in points as we watch David Rudiman in the 0-0 for Michael Waltrip Racing. Jeff, he's up on that high side, but right now he's still looking for speed, just 39.
He's looking for comfort as much as anything. Sometimes these guys, they'll give up a little bit of speed, Steve, for the long run. You get your car where it's comfortable and you can run around the racetrack, whether it's the top or the bottom. But the key thing is you can go a fuel run. You know, Larry keeps documenting. We don't normally have a lot of cautions, so that means green flag runs, green flag stops. So you've got to get your car where you can go the distance.
The biggest thing he's looking for is 4 top 10, probably top 5 finishes, and being 155 points out of the top 12, still no guarantee he'll be in the chase.
Well, Wendy, hearing that David Rudiman's teammate Marcos Ambrose has a little damage.
Yes, the whole right side of Marcos Ambrose's car has been flattened, and you can tell how they put those decals over there with the Clorox and different paint schemes with Little Debbie, and it's almost like a split between the 2 sponsors because everything's been scratched off that right rear side of the car. Marcos has climbed out of the race car. He is in the front of the area near the hood, just leaning against the pit box and letting the team make some changes. It looks like just like some slight changes. They're not going to fix the right rear quarter panel right now until the end of that practice for Marcos Ambrose. You can tell, you can see the frustration when he climbed out of that race car.
You know what, Steve? We may have found the Darlington of the North.
He doesn't look fizzed up right there.
I don't think he's fizzed up. No, I think he's a little bit on the flat side right now. Like the back part of that quarter panel.
Bill Elliott pretty good in this practice session. The 21 Wood Brothers car, he is 7th quickest. Bill's going to start this race well up in the top 10. He's going to start 9th. Of course, he knows his way around here. 7 Michigan wins.
He's led over 1,000 laps.
You know, back to Ambrose real quick. They were really, really bad here in June. I talked to his crew chief, Frank Kerr, and Frank said, you know what? We could not do anything that car would respond to. They finished 31st, and they brought a brand new race car here. He said they were loose. He said we were so loose, it was loose when they unloaded it out of the trailer on Friday and never could get it tightened up. They brought a brand new race car here and a total different approach. Looks like they may be a little better, but they still have work to do on that 47.
Mark Martin still pacing this practice with the quickest lap. Almost 40 minutes into a 1-hour practice. Stay with us. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice for Michigan is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. Juan Pablo Montoya, Joey Logano crossed the start-finish line.
Haven't we seen these guys race each other before recently, like Indianapolis?
Joey said me and Juan Pablo were tight.
He did. He said they were having fun. They were racing hard. I know that.
I guarantee they were racing hard. They were rubbing, baby. They were doing what you're supposed to do over these race cars. Putting donuts down the side.
Good times. Good times.
What'd he say? Manny gets a run off that turn, too.
Yeah, but you get him on the other end.
It's not the end I want to get him, though, is it, Larry?
You see Montoya was down just a little bit in turn 3 and 4. Joey Logano was up just a shade off the bottom, and I talked about this in the first practice. This is what we saw in June. You could be so much faster through a guy through the corner if you were running the bottom. But if he was running the top, you could not get by him because he was keeping it wound up, and we could get that good run off the corner down the straightaway.
Bob, what's going on with Juan Pablo?
Well, here's what's interesting, Steve. This is only Juan Pablo Montoya's second run of this practice session. After he made his initial run, he and crew chief Brian Patty went back to their transporter and talked things over. And what Brian told me is, you know what? No matter what change we make to this race car, it doesn't help. It's been good since the get-go, and we're using the June setup here. That's what's so surprising about the 42's performance. A lot of people think they're the best car in the show. Patty also told me it's all about the chase right now, and we are happy because we believe we're proving a lot of people wrong. We're going to be in that chase, he says, Wendy.
I think Joey Logano might be listening to our broadcast, it seems like, in their radio, because just as Larry Mack and Jeff Hammond were talking about Juan Pablo Montoya getting him in 1 and 2, Joey came over the radio. As Mark Martin pulls out right here, Joey Logano came over the radio and said he's getting me right there, and his spotter, Mark Robertson, came back and responded. But yeah, you're getting him on the other end off of turn 3 and 4, and you saw it just a moment ago. You tend to see JPM pull away right there into 1 and 2, but then once we get into 3 and 4, Joey closes that gap. So it's a balance between two ends of the racetrack, and that is a balance of those crew chief and the drivers fight all practice long.
But you could see right there how Joey closed up on him in the middle of 1 and 2, and now Montoya was high, and look how that speed carries all the way down the straightaway, and it almost becomes an aggravation to this car that's running on the bottom, because you think you're going to get him, he pulls away as you get to the exit of the corner.
David Stremme is 4th overall in his Dodge. 17 laps of practice for him in this 1-hour session, final session for tomorrow's race.
He's going to start 20th when we take the green flag tomorrow. Has 5 Michigan starts, best finish of 19th. And he by far is the fastest Dodge, only Dodge in the top 10 right now. His teammate Kurt Busch is 11th.
He had a good qualifying effort at Watkins Glen, but had a rough day on Monday. Elliott Sadler, fresh off his appearance in the Lazy Boy Lounge, is just 38th quickest right now.
Yeah, I'm not too sure he's going to be very happy about that, because, again, you're on the wrong side of that column where you want to practice at, and this has been a pretty good racetrack for him.
It has, but you know, just across the board, they started the season off with such a high note with a great run in the Daytona 500.
Almost won it.
3 of the Richard Petty Motorsports cars were in the top 10 there. Yeah, if it had rained about 2 laps earlier, we'd be talking about Elliott Sadler, the 2009 Daytona 500 winner. But there's no question And this is not directed at Elliott. It's not directed at the race team. Something has to change at this race team, I think, if they're going to get better.
Brad Keselowski making another start in the 25 car. Right now he is 13th quickest. Of course, got the big win at Talladega earlier this season, driving the 09 car for James Finch.
And this weekend he's in a Hendrick car with Tony Uri Jr. as his crew chief.
Just read this morning, one of the things, we talked about him yesterday, one of the things he's considering for 2010, he's definitely going to run the entire schedule in the Nationwide Series, which means, and he said it means I need to be in a Chevrolet on the Sprint Cup Series time, or Sprint Cup Series side, wanting to run a full schedule there as well.
And that's obviously a pretty small box of race teams when we really think about it. You know, what really convoluted it, and I guess it's a good thing, because I think it's awesome. Mark Martin has already announced he's going to run the full season in 2010 in the 5 car, but the original plan, Mark Martin full-time in 2009, he and Brad Keselowski would share that 5 car in 2010. So when Mark announced full-time again in 2010, Jeff, it kind of convoluted and made things a little complex.
It really did, but at the same time, you can understand Rick Hendrick's point of view. You take a guy like Mark Martin, you get him to convince to drive your car, and now you're having the success there. You want to stick with it as long as you can, and as long as Mark is running like he is, I can't blame Rick Hendrick, and I can hopefully Brad Keselowski can understand the reason why.
After the break, Bob Dillner tells us what's going on in the Jimmy Johnson camp, that 48 car you see there. Stay with us here at Michigan International here on Speed.
Welcome back to Brooklyn, Michigan. Final practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race tomorrow here at Michigan International Speedway. Jimmy Johnson on the racetrack. The theme of this practice for Jimmy, getting better each time out. Jimmy Johnson said he really liked the pair of shocks that Chad Canals put on that machine in that last run. So Chad had saved a set of tires. They came in, made a track bar adjustment, filled it with fuel, put the stickers on. This is the most important run of the day for Jimmy Johnson. Wendy?
Just too loose for Mark Martin, who is our previous winner here in the spring. Now they've changed some of the shocks there with the Packers, moving them back to where they were. It was real bad loose in, and it didn't have enough forward bite. So crew chief Alan Gustafson has made some changes that helped the drive off. And this another run they just made, and they made some changes in here. Mark Martin on that last time said it's hard to tell. It might have been better, and now he's reporting it's a little bit too tight. So again, chasing these race cars, chasing this racetrack, it's much of the same thing from everyone down on my side of the garage.
Oh, we got a car in the wall right
looks
there,
like
Wendy.
Robbie Gordon in the 7 car. And boy, that's not what you want to happen with only about 7 or 8 minutes left to go in final practice, but he whacked it pretty good there in the middle of 1 and 2. Robbie's another one of those guys. He loves to run the high line.
Take another look. I'm not too sure it was all that hard, Larry. I think he got in, just kind of leaned on it when he went in, and I think that's the key. It was still not that bad. Oh, I take that back.
Yeah, it was
a little bit harder than I thought.
Pretty decent lick to both ends.
Yep.
Maybe more the right front than the right rear.
But that's the one blessing of this new car. You can do something like that, and because of that, where that block is put in there as far as the foam is concerned, right behind that number 7 number, it kind of keeps that wall off the tires, and that's where your damage really comes from. All that cosmetic stuff, hey, you can fix that real easy. So when you get up against those tires and knock the front end or the rear end out of line or bend something on the chassis, that's when you got to worry.
We're getting a report that Robbie said the car just would not turn. Let's see, that's about maybe 7 or 8 Michigan stripes we've gotten.
Jeff Hammond said at Darlington of the North.
It's the way it's becoming. Kyle Busch in the 18 car back out there. He's run a total of 13 laps. He's 12th quickest. I don't think we'll see the top of the speed chart change a lot. Obviously, I think this racetrack is starting to heat up again. Some of the clouds are going away just a little bit. I don't think anybody's going to throw new tires on this late in the game. The only way you want to throw new tires on is if you can do like Kurt Busch did in the beginning and make a long run. You'll just get deceived if you just make a 4, 5, 6 lap run on brand new race tires.
Let's talk about strategy for a minute. Kyle Busch, you see starting deep in the field, 39th. So if you're Steve Addington atop the pit box, what do you do to get track position?
2 tires. I mean, if you can get yourself in the right position, you know, and it provided. Now, again, I haven't got enough information on how the left side tires are working, but I believe you could come in here and maybe take an opportunity, get 2 tires on to get track position, and then you'd be where you need to be.
Yeah, the only thing that would snake bite you on 2 tires is what we were talking about earlier. We don't get a lot of cautions here. If you had to make 2 full runs on your left side tires, which could be 80 to 90 laps, I'd say your driver would be pretty unhappy with the way that car is driving. Late in the race, no matter what, we know track position and clean air will prevail. That's when you'll really start throwing the possible 2 right side tires at it.
Denny Hamlin 21st right now, 30 laps of practice on his FedEx Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing.
And something else can help you out a lot. You got a good pit crew. You can pick up, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 maybe on pit road every now and then. You can move your way up. And don't forget something else, Steve. It's very important. You saw here the first race, double file restarts, shootout style. That could be a huge, huge plus. Some way it could be a huge, big negative, but it could work in your advantage to allow you to get the job done. Now, guys, this is what you call cheating.
That's one way of doing it. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Now, there was a few pit stops. I wished I had one of those because that's how loose or tight we were.
Stay with us here on Speed. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice for Michigan is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward.
There it is.
Michigan stripe.
You got it. I'm telling you right now, this place is starting to look a lot like Darlington. That white wall is getting black every time you turn around. Look. Are you sure we're not at Darlington, guys?
Tell you what, that was some serious looking black stripes, and we've got them at both ends, but especially down in middle of turn 1 and 2 and off. And there's part of the reason, right there, Robbie Gordon, 7 car.
End result of what happens here when you get too close to the outside safer barrier.
We're less than 5 minutes in this practice, so I would say if you're not out there, you better be getting out there in a hurry, and if you're out there now, you're probably going to run it to the end, just like this 14 car of Tony Stewart right now. Tony has run 23 laps. He's 27th quickest in this 14 car.
And he could be dangerous tomorrow. He, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, a couple other guys comfortably in on points. They can gamble perhaps on gas. They can gamble on tire strategy because they want 10 points per win. Larry, as you said yesterday, 4 races left. That means there's 40 bonus points, 10 per win.
Yeah, right now, we have 4 races to go with 40 bonus points available. But as far as seeding, Mark Martin, who's 11th in the points, he's the #1 seed. He has the 40 bonus points. You've got Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, Kyle Busch that has 30 bonus points. Then we have some that has 2. We have some that has no bonus points, like Carl Edwards.
Bob Dillner, Carl Edwards still looking for 10 bonus points. Winless in 2009.
Yeah, Carl Edwards definitely wants to get those bonus points, wants that victory as he heads out into the racetrack right now. But the big thing is the eye on the prize, the championship. One of his goals of the season, obviously. Right now, Carl Edwards likes his race car, has great bite in that 99 coming up off the corner. It's still a little bit tight upon entry and in the center, and what they think is happening is the splitter is hitting the pavement. So what they've done is they've taken a can of spray paint and spray painted the bottom of that splitter. That way when he comes in next time, they will know if that paint is not there, it's actually hitting the splitter, and that's possibly the reason why it's pushing.
And we know Carl can't hear us right now, but happy birthday, Carl Edwards. Today's Carl's birthday.
Turns 30 years old, and it's also the 5th anniversary of his first NASCAR Sprint Cup Series start.
And just to make one more point, I talked about Mark Martin being the #1 seed. The only way those bonus points do you any good is you have to make the top 12.
Wendy.
And Brian Vickers is continuing to make a lot of long runs this practice session. He's still been too loose under throttle, and the left rear shock change that that Ryan Pemberton, the crew chief, made did help it out, but he has been reporting that he needs more forward bite. Ryan reminded Brian that Mark Martin is reporting much of the same thing, who's been fast all of this practice session. They can afford to be a little bit tighter in one. They've made a lot of safe changes, track bar, right rear shock, but Ryan Pemberton right now is just giving a reminder to Brian Vickers that he needs to head out to driver intros for Nationwide, where he is also on the pole for today's race as well as tomorrow.
Make sure you got to do that right quick. Otherwise, you get put to the back of the field, and that wouldn't be too cool, would it, guys?
Nope.
But I think you're going to see a lot of people scratching their heads and kind of standing around discussing what do we need to do to our race car to make sure that we can tune on it tomorrow. I mean, making our race car tight, making it loose, we can do all those things, but making it where we can do both if we need to. If we need to start it out a little bit tighter and free it up, or if we need to start it out a little bit free and tighten it up, that's going to be, I think, one of the key elements. And you've got to be able to do it a lot with air pressure and the track bar adjustments, because as Larry said, you don't get a lot of caution flags to be adjusting sprint rubbers and stuff like that. You don't want to do it on a green flag stop.
The flags are out, so that will end practice. Next time we see these race cars will be a little after 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Now, all the smoke we'll see in the garage area will be the crew chief and the engineers' brain smoking in the front of all these haulers as they sift through all this information gathered and try to come up with the best package and setup to start this 400-mile race with.
Mark Martin had 37 laps of practice, and he had the fastest lap of practice. Mark Martin, Brian Vickers, David Reagan, David Stremme, Jimmy Johnson, and Jeff Gordon, your quickest as we take a look at the rest of the top 10. Again, Dale Earnhardt Jr., last win coming here 43 races ago, June of 2008.
But when I look at that 83 car, he's been fast in every practice. He obviously was fast qualifying. He sat on the pole, but they need to seal the deal. They need to get that Red Bull 83 car to victory lane.
Better be watching out for that 48 as well as that 42. I like the way they looked, and I like all the adjustments they made to get their cars where they look pretty solid at the end of this practice.
Thanks for going along with us on this ride over the past 2 days. Bob Dildner and Wendy Venturini and their crews working extremely hard in the hot August sun here at the Michigan International Speedway. For Jeff Hammond, Larry McReynolds, I'm Steve Burns. Our thanks to the entire Speed crew for their hard work. And our thanks to you for watching at home.
I know how Jerry Lewis feels now.
Telethon.
The Labor Day Telethon. Oh, hey, are we there yet?
Yes, we are.
Oh, have a great weekend, everybody.
Time to party.